Hey guys, here we are today at the Welder Up shop, and I've got my 1946 John Deere Model B tractor in here. Really cool tractor. I found this tractor in Sandy Valley, Nevada. It's been sitting for probably, I would say, 50, 60 years. It's a 1946, so I would imagine that they farmed with it for probably 10 years, and then it probably got parked. It's pretty crusty. I've been kind of dosing it down with some diesel fuel WD-40. I actually got the front and one tire to take air outside. This one obviously is completely shot. But I put a little something together with my buddy Mike. He came down from Iowa to help me put this tractor back together. He actually sent me down a carburetor and a few parts to get this thing fired up today. That's our goal. It hasn't ran forever. The one nice thing about this tractor is it has a actual starter on it. Most of the tractors pre-46 were all hand start, like my 35A that I have. And you've probably seen it on our YouTube channel when I used to drive it around to go get coffee, which I still do. We fire it up and drive it over to the Treasure Island at the Starbucks and get coffee and cruise around. It's just, so anyway, I'm trying to get all the rest of my John Deeres fired up so we can go cruise them and have fun with them. You know, I just have a love for these old tractors. I've just loved them my whole life. I think they're just neat. There's something about driving down an old country road and looking out into some old farmer's pasture and see an old tractor sitting out there. As a little kid growing up, my imagination of going out and firing that tractor up, just driving it around. I mean, they only go 10 miles an hour, but it's just something about listening to them run. These have a really cool, distinguished sound. And that's what's gonna make this tractor cool today, is to actually hear it fire up and run. Something that's been sitting for 50 years actually run today. That's our goal. I'm hoping that it'll run. You know, there's the only good thing we got going for us today is the fact that it does turn over, and as long as it'll turn over, we have a good chance that it might run. So anyway, I'm gonna get to work on this thing, and hopefully we can get it running and go out and drive this thing around the parking lot till the tire falls off it, because it isn't gonna take much. We'll go do donuts till the tire falls off. How about that? So that'll be fun. If we get it running, that's our goal.
Mike Spurl, and I'm from Sherrill, Iowa. I know Steve Darnell through a mutual friend of ours, Kurt Allman with Allman Auctions. He found out Steve loves these old John Deere tractors, and Kurt knew I had a few parts that Steve might need, so I got to know Steve through a carburetor for this John Deere tractor right here that I sent out, and now we're out here and we're gonna try to get her going for him. Up on a little hobby farm back in Iowa. My dad grew up on a farm. They milked cows, and he went off to the war and came home and moved to town. Still had an interest in tractors, so he bought an old John Deere. I helped him fix it up when I was about 5, 6 years old. We took it to parades and did different fun stuff with it. And as I got a little older, my interest grew a little deeper. And now we got 10 or 12 old tractors. Just love working on them, love the history of them that they brought through this country. And as I grew a little older, I became a tool and die maker, did that for about 25 years and decided it was time for a change. So I went to auction school and became an auctioneer, which is really nice because now I can combine my love of auctioning with tractors and work with Allman Auctions, Mr. Kurt Allman, and I'm able to do both, enjoy tractors and do some auctioneering, sell them, and it's been a great combination for me.
Can you imagine the dirt, the rain, whatever's been going on in its lifetime? The good thing about this tractor is it's been in the desert probably most of its life. You know, a lot of the tractors back east and Midwest, you know, a lot of them are rotted out from the weather. This tractor is actually in really good shape. One of the things that really happens with these old tractors is when they sit on a flat tire like this, they sit in the mud and they rot. And it rots the wheel out of them. And then the valve stems right here, they always rust around them. Knowing that this has been a desert tractor, you can see that it has really no rust. I mean, it looks rusty on the surface, which makes it look cool, but there's not a lot of rust going on this tractor. So to me, it makes it worth even more money to have a tractor like this. But right now, what we're doing is we're going to go in here and we're going to vacuum out. I don't know, what does it look like in there, Mike?
Just a little. It's condensation, I think, over the years, and a little old gas tarnish that just sat in there. Actually, there's parts of the tank, the sides are shiny yet.
Wow.
It looks good. It's just that little bit that had been sitting over the years. I actually think we got most of it.
All right,
Really
let's
do.
just drop that sediment bowl, clean that up.
Yeah, so what we're doing here is this is a sediment bowl, and the fuel comes down through the tank, and there's a screen in there which acts as your filter, essentially. And then that fuel comes out of there and goes to the carburetor. And over time, as some of that old fuel sat in there, gummed up, whatnot, we're just going to take that apart, clean out the holes, clean out the screen, so we know we've got a good, clean fuel system to work with. We're just going to start at the top, work our way through this whole tractor, so we don't have any problems, and hopefully we're gonna drive this thing out of the shop later today.
See that in there? It's just a bunch of poopy right there. That's all that is. So this is what we're worried about. And that's a lot of, can you see it? That's a lot of bugs in there. They got in the tank, they crawled down in and got stuck in here and couldn't get out. Once they fall in there, they can't get out of there. But anyway, it's a lot of bugs. We'll clean it up. We got a little, we can make that work.
And a little ear broke off, but
I'm gonna, we could probably actually.
there's the gasket.
Oh, good. So it did have a gasket. Do you want to, should we make a new one? Or?
We can make a new one. Then I like to smear a little grease around them.
Yep. So they slide in a lot better.
We'll get that cleaned out.
Okay.
And then we'll get a couple wires, poke them up through these holes in this valve, and then
Find some cork.
we'll make sure we got gas coming through.
Sure. Okay, so what we're doing here is I'm going to get a little, carburetor cleaner. And this stuff will eat this crap off. You can see it in there. It's already kind of turning it into a little bit of, I don't even really have to wash it that hard. Put my finger in there a little bit and kind of clean all that grease, that crappy stuff out of there.
That's how you get clean fingernails.
That's right. This is like, see, if you're a little kid and you played in the mud when you were a little kid and in the sandbox and shit, you're not afraid to do this kind of stuff because this shit causes cancer. Just so you know, this gets into your bloodstream and then it affects you later in life. Okay, so there you go. That's all your shit. So make sure you use this stuff. And then another thing, I've been in situations where two or three of us are working on a car and you're like spraying brake cleaner or this stuff and you shoot it right in your friend's eyes. Dude, let me tell you something. That shit hurts. When you get this sprayed in your eyes, make sure you wear safety glasses too. Okay, see it's a lot cleaner in there now. Probably dry it down a little bit more. Go through the, I think I'm gonna cut out a new gasket. See if I can find some cork over there, which I should have some. Here's the little,
It's the wire bed. So this is the part that comes right out of the tank that the glass bowl would actually go up against. There's a gasket goes on top of that bowl. And then there's a little bail you tighten up, will seal that. What I'm gonna go in and do right now is just go in and clean up that mating surface that gasket goes against, just in case there's any old crud and gunk and dried up gas that's in there, so we get a good seal and we don't have any leaks later. So I'm just gonna take a little emery paper, go up in there, get that cleaned out. We'll put some carb cleaner in there and get this all cleaned up.
So this little ear broke off right here, and that's kind of what holds this on there, and it helps force this up. It tightens. This tightens up. This actually sits right in here like this. Okay, but the ear broke off, so I don't know. We're gonna either try to weld it or I don't know, figure something out here in just a minute. I'm still kind of on the fence about it because it's kind of a weird metal. It's not even really like a good solid forged piece of metal. It's like a piece of, I don't know what it is.
Pot metal, I think.
Yeah, it's not really good shit. Okay, so what we're doing here basically is getting this set up where it was at this is how they work, okay? We've got this off now, the little jam nut, which actually holds the bowl up. and it puts pressure on this and basically pushes the bowl up with this thing right here and seals it to the gasket. But what happened when we took it out, it was so crusted up, we broke this ear off right here. I don't know if this is gonna weld or not, but I'm gonna try it. I need a smaller tip, really. No, it probably won't hold it. We'll just do this shit. Did it make it? Did it make it? No?
Now we can't see. Close.
So look, that's an old school way of trying to weld it back together. And you know what's funny is to try to weld something like that together with a TIG, a MIG, or a stick welder, it probably wouldn't work. So learning how to weld with a torch and brass is very valuable in a lot of different ways. But like I said, I mean, to try to TIG weld that back together, because of the quality of that bolt, and I could tell looking at it that when it broke, it had like a weird pot metal look to it.
Porous.
When you strike a TIG on it, there's a good chance you're just gonna blow it apart. You know what I'm saying? With heat, and that was a way too big of a tip. If I had the right tip, I could have went in and finessed this a little bit more, but I don't have a small enough tip actually. But just learning how to divot when you can and get it to stick is very valuable to learn how to weld with one of these. So just keep that in mind.
And you know, back in the day, that's how a lot of the cast iron was fixed with these tractors.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see what we like to call farmer fixes.
Yeah.
A lot of brazing, and some of them were really cool fixes. Years ago, people restored these tractors. They wanted to eliminate all that, make it perfect. I think it's really cool to just leave them on there.
Oh, me
look
too.
at the
Me too.
ingenuity.
Me too.
And they had to use what they had.
Yeah, and a lot of it was just, you know, a piece of tie wire or a coat hanger.
Yeah, or part of a
and they welded-
screwdriver or spark plug.
They welded them together with a torch,
Yeah.
you know? So just saying, I mean, I'm hoping this holds together. It may not, but that's the way the old timers did it right there.
They
So-
used what they had, is right.
Okay, so what we did is we got a little too much heat on it. I'm gonna try to cool this flame down a little bit. We're gonna try to pull it apart. I kind of got a little too much, and I'm gonna just keep this outside edge so we don't get where we were.
Here's my camera.
Oh, I'm not. Let me just get this thing. Aha!
So there we go. We got it apart.
Nice.
So this is what we were looking for when we broke that ear off. It captures this flat spot on there, and it had broken. We'd taken it apart, so we put her back together and we're good to go. So we've got a fuel shutoff valve in the fuel system here also, and that you can turn the fuel off from back here at the operator station on the tractor. So we just want to make sure that's free of any debris, and we've got fuel flowing through there free also. It looks like right now the rod that turns that on and off is seized up. So we'll look into that a little bit deeper. If it's actually in the on position right now, we really wouldn't have to mess with it because we won't be needing to shut the fuel off. It's just that some farmers prefer to shut the fuel off on the tractor to keep it from getting into the carburetor. And actually a lot of guys shut their tractors off that way. They actually turn the fuel off, let the tractor run until it run out of fuel. That way there was no fuel sitting in there and whatever. So it's just a preference of what each individual likes. There's still a lot of guys that do it, and there's some guys that just shut them off. So whatever one's preference is works.
It's got to be, I don't know, it's probably not the original one, but it's old. It's probably been in there for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. Crazy enough, it's made out of cork. And what happens is when you tighten it up, it creates a seal in between this and the on-off for the fuel. So I'm just putting a little grease on it to kind of restore it a little bit, give it some flexibility. That grease kind of helps seal it a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and just try it. If it leaks, I'll make a new one. But right now, rather than going through the trouble and making a new one. It's not cracked, it's still in pretty good shape. I'm gonna go ahead and try to use it. So everything's kind of somewhat coming together here. We're getting close to putting it back on and seeing if it'll hold some fuel. Realistically, if you're in a shop like we are, and you have a torch, and you've already put a little gas in the tank, you sprayed it with a bunch of WD-40, trying to loosen up that fitting, don't do what I'm gonna do right now. Just don't do it, okay? Unless you're an experienced farmer. Because every farmer on the planet that's watching this right now has done this shit before. But anyway, we are running into problems that we can't. That valve needs heat because what happens is that gas gets in there and it gets sticky. Over the years of it sitting there, it's like you ever chewed on corn and it gets stuck in your tooth and you can kind of bite it like this up and down. That's what that is, basically. It's just like corn stuck in there. And it's gummed up. The only way to do it is put a little heat on it, okay? So, not good. This is just not good, none of it. All right, see if it'll do it now. Let me get some heat on it. Turn. There we go. See that? It worked. I mean, we got a fire, but it worked. And the gas tank is actually, so then you turn the oxygen on. Then you put the fire out. Hey, come here real quick. Come closer right here. You see all that shit that just came out of there? See that black stuff right there? That's what was in there, and it boiled out. So that's what we wanted to get away. It's just crap.
Yep.
You know, so that's what happened. This just basically, and the problem is if you go to jerking on this too much, there's a right underneath here where the fuel comes out. It's soldered on, and you break that seal, then you're just gonna have leaks forever. So it's really probably something you shouldn't do, but I did it anyway.
And there is seals in that fitting or in that valve that the heat would obviously wreck, but we didn't really have a choice in this matter. We had to get it loosened up, so we went ahead, put the heat in it. We'll deal with the leak if it leaks later.
Yeah, in the worst case scenario, what it'll do is it just won't shut the fuel off really. So I think other than that, we're probably gonna be good, unless it blows past back here, which it could. But we're gonna run with it anyway. Well, we got this welded back on, and now that we got it somewhat cleaned up, I just put a little WD on it because it was really crusty. Once you heat it like that, you boil everything out of it. Anything that was lubricating these threads is gone. And I don't want to fight it when I get on there, so we're gonna just put a little on it so it'll screw on a lot easier. So now we're probably gonna find out if our fuel's gonna run through the line, if we can turn it on and off, which consists of probably putting another little bit of gas in it, and then turn it on and off, see if the gas comes in and out. Right? Or are we good?
It's out. We're
Okay,
good.
well, let's do it. Let's put some gas in it.
Just burnt the hairs in my nose. But this is a line we're actually not going to use because this has a 2-compartment fuel tank, and we're just going to use the big one. The tractor comes down through here. Our carburetor is going to mount right here, and then it's going to go into the engine down through the manifold here. So we've got some of our throttle rods and what choke rod that we're going to hook up. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and clean up these mating gasket surfaces here so we get a good seal. I think they're out about a turn and a half. We'll have to get that set. This is our carburetor that come off the tractor. It's a Marvell Schebler carburetor is what it is. It's a single barrel carburetor. It's going to mount right in that opening right there. This is a carburetor we had taken apart prior to this. Disassembled it all, cleaned out all the ports and holes and everything that goes through it. Rebuilt it, put gasket sets in it, O-rings, the whole works. So we should be ready to bolt that on, get our fuel lines hooked up. It's got a new needle and seat in it. Should be ready to go, but we're going to go ahead and get that bolted up and get all our linkages hooked up for the throttle, the choke, and whatnot. So what we got here is a little gasket pack. There's a few more in here than what we need. We really only need these 2 flange gaskets that are going to bolt to either side of the carburetor to create a good seal. Won't let air leak, won't let gas leak. So we're going to put those on either side of the carburetor. They go right there like that. And then your bolts are going to go ahead and...
Do we need another one of these?
We do. We need one more bolt for here. So that's what they are. And again, these gaskets are available online. They are reproduced beans. They're a very common thing. Anytime you really disassemble something, you're going to want to replace the gasket. It's really cheap insurance to know that you've got everything back together right. Magneto's carburetors, a lot of them were the same on cars, tractors.
Yeah, motorcycles. The old Harley Davidsons had carburetors just about like this same, almost the same kind of setup. It's pretty crazy how back in World War II, prior to that, how simple things were. And to pull this carburetor apart and rebuild it is really nothing because there's not a lot. It's crazy.
There is.
I mean, if you look at this compared to a fuel injection system now, this is like insanely easier.
It is.
So you could pull over out in the field and just with a screwdriver, literally a flat tip screwdriver like this, you could rebuild this carburetor almost. So it's pretty cool.
Very simple. And all it does is it creates an air fuel mixture.
Yeah.
And they use this technology until fuel injection comes
Yeah,
along.
it's pretty cool, but that's how simple it is right there. And sometimes they ran them like this, or they'd run them like this, but not this style. This style is made to run like this, but you know, they started making the old Strombergs and stuff like that. They'd run them this way.
Downdrafts. Yep.
So anyway, all right, you want to stick this baby on?
What we're going to do is take our carburetor and get it installed right now. We've got our two gaskets, and we're going to go ahead. I'm going to have Steve go over to the other side of the tractor. We're going to hold this up there. Steve's going to get the bolts started. We'll physically get the carburetor bolted into the tractor, and then we're going to hook up our linkages and fuel line. It's a little bit tricky sliding everything in here. You almost need 4 hands, which is why we got two guys doing it is right.
Come to me just a little bit, Mike. Down. Come to me a little.
Now we've got it physically in location, got our gaskets installed. Just need to get all the bolts tightened up now. You're going to want to go ahead and get everything started, get the bolts started loosely, leave them loose, get everything set, then come back and tighten everything up. Okay, so we've got our carburetor installed. Now we're going to hook up our linkages. We've got a choke linkage right here. Comes all the way back to the operator station. That's going to allow you to choke the carburetor before you start, restricts the air to the engine. Just choke just like what's on your lawnmower, your older cars. Anything. Everything's had a choke when it had a carburetor on it. So we're going to go ahead and get that linkage. Then we're going to go ahead and hook up our throttle linkage. That comes back to our governor. So when you pull or push or pull the throttle lever up there, that in turn goes down to the governor and regulates your fuel. And then that hooks up down here. So really, you've just got to hook up your fuel line, and there's 2 linkages. It's just that simple. This is the choke right here. We've got that hooked up. You can see how that works. Pull that back here. And then that opens and closes a butterfly valve that's in your carburetor. So just mechanical linkage all the way back to the operator station. Yeah, we got our carb installed. We had a little leak down here coming out of the bottom of the stem. So we're going to go ahead. We took it apart. Might have just had a gasket pinched or something like that. So we dropped the bowl off it, checked everything out. Now we're just going to put it back together.
Yeah, the stems have been repaired on it, so that could be some of our issue.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not getting up far enough and it's not applying it. Maybe we should double gasket that, because when they repaired this, it might be bottoming out.
It could be. Yeah, some of these carburetors are noted for twisting this stem off, and so that's what happened to this carburetor at some point in time. And you can see it's had a repair job done to it. You can see someone brazed a new stem on that. So it's a common problem. A lot of them have been repaired that way, but that is just something that happens with these carburetors.
Okay, so what we've got done here is we've got the carburetor put on, we've got the fuel line put on, we've got the tank pretty much cleaned out. I mean, everything's about ready to go. I think the last thing we need to do here is check some of the fluids, make sure we got oil in it. We want to make sure we got a little water in it when we fire it up, and then get a little bit more gas in it, because we don't have very much gas in it. with the battery in it. It's a 6 volt, it's probably slow. We might have to jump it a little bit to get it to run, but we're gonna go ahead and try to crank on this here in just a minute and get it fired up and make it run.